So what's up guys, it's Ash here and welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video guys, we've got some custom tactics and player instructions for one of my favourite pressure formations in FIFA 23, this being the 4-3-1-2. It's team of the season, so if you guys need any coins, make sure you check out MMOXP.com. Their link is down in the description. They're fast, cheap and reliable, and if you use my code Rema, you can get yourself a nice 5% discount. Okay guys, so starting off with the custom tactics. For the defensive style, I like to have this on press after possession loss. This is so we can maintain the pressure on our opponent if we lose the ball and potentially win the ball back in a dangerous area to score more goals. Press after possession loss also means that if we don't successfully win the ball back from the pressure after like 7 seconds, then our players will stop pressing. So they'll drop off, be a little bit more passive, which means it's not as stamina draining and we can, be a bit more effective throughout the entire game as opposed to like 10 minutes. Now moving on to the defensive width, I like to have this on about 45. The reason for this is so we can primarily defend in a narrow shape so that we can block all those attacks through the middle. The reason we don't have like a super low width though is because we still need to have a bit of natural width so we can cover the wide areas in case an opponent tries to go down the wing, which is why I like to have it on about 45 as we're still able to cover those areas. Now moving on to the depth, I like to have this on 72. This is so we can get the automatic offside trap. This means when an opponent tries to like constantly through ball you, a lot of the times their players may be in offside position, so you will get quick possession of the ball. You also keep a nice high line so you're able to apply that pressure and win the ball back in your opponent's half to really catch them out. It's super useful to have a high depth with this formation in my opinion. Now moving on to build up play guys, I like to have this on fast build up. The reason for this is it goes hand in hand with the pressure tactic and the 72 depth. So we're going to try and win the ball back higher up the pitch with the higher depth and the press after possession loss, and this works with fast build up because when we win the ball back we want our players to move nice and quickly, and so we can get like faster attacks off to catch our opponent out. If this feels too quick for you, you can use something like balance, that's also fine, but I honestly like using fast build up with this. Now moving on to chance creation guys, I like to have this on direct passing. This is because it's the most meta option you can use, where your attacking players will bunch up against the defenders, so you can do the really overpowered 1v1 isolation plays. Players also make extra movements in the box so you can get off the extra pass and guarantee those goals. Direct passing is super important in my opinion. It's by far the best option to use. Now moving on to the attacking width, I like to have this on about 47. This is because I don't like having the width too low, as it feels like your players are sat on top of each other and you can't really get anything going. And on the flip side, I don't like to have the width too high, otherwise it feels like you have to fire missiles as passes just to get the ball to your other teammates. So everyone feels too spread apart basically. So I kind of just like to go for something in between, so it's neither too narrow or too wide. Now moving on to players in box, I like to have this on 6. This is so we can get some players into the box to create those chances, but at the same time we don't overcommit the entire team to the point where we're always getting counter-attacked. As for corners and free kicks, I have these both on 1. There is a corner kick routine that I use. There is a link to that in the top right hand corner of the screen. Now moving on to the players you want to use guys, in the 2 striker positions, because it is a 2 striker formation, I suggest going for a balance between the 2 players. So what I like to do is I like to go for a creative player on the left side in Havertz, and then a more clinical finisher on the right hand side. This is so we've got like a creative finisher dynamic, and I feel like you just get a lot more out of your front line that way. If you have like 2 finishers in the striker position, you're very one-dimensional and you're restricted to things like through balls and crosses, which is not always the best. So having like a creative player in one of the positions just allows you to be a lot more varied and get a lot more out of the strikers this way. Now moving on to the cam, I think it's very important that you use somebody you're comfortable with, but you're also going to want to use somebody that is obviously very good creatively, because this is the main playmaker in the team. You're going to want somebody that is obviously able to pass the ball, somebody that has decent agility so they can work the angles, maybe the skill moves, and definitely the shooting, as they do get into those areas quite a lot. But it's important that you do use a creative player, as if you use somebody that is like slow and clunky and has no creative ability, you're going to struggle, because this is the main creative player in the team. Now moving on to the right centre mid, I like to go for a more box-to-box style player. This is somebody that is going to attack and defend and have a bit of a free roll. So you're going to want somebody with a high work rate if you can get it, as you get the maximum contribution in both attack and defense. But just ensure that this player is nice and well rounded so they can do a bit of everything. Now moving on to the middle centre mid, I like to go for a more defensive minded player. This is somebody that's going to stay back, break up the play and really add defensive support. So you're going to want somebody with a medium high work rate if you can get it, so you get the maximum contribution in defense and they're not too bothered about going forward, but just ensure that they are a good defensive player. Now moving on to the left centre mid, we can use use an actual attacker here. Now this will make more sense with the player instructions, but you don't have to worry about this player's defensive stats, as they're not actually going to have to play as a centre mid in game. So you can use an actual attacker like an Mbappe and Alawaran, as yeah, they're not going to have to play as a centre mid. So I'm just using Saka. If you can get like good defensive stats as well as them being like really good in attack, then that's an added bonus, but don't worry too much about it. Now moving on to the fullbacks, in the left back position I like to go for a more attacking fullback. I've got Roberto Carlos. This is somebody that's going to attack and contribute going forward for me, so I like to do that. And then in the right back position I've got a more defensive fullback, somebody that's going to stay back and add defensive support, and that being Cafu. I just like to go for that balance between the two fullbacks. As for the centre backs, these need to be those meta defenders, the medium high work rate, but yeah, there's not too much to say about them. As for the goalkeeper, it really does not matter. Now moving on to the player instructions, guys, on both the strikers I like to have them on stay central and mixed attack. We have them on stay central because it's important that they stay in the correct positions where a striker should be, and we don't want them drifting out super wide, as we're not going to get the most out of the players. Stay central ensures that they always keep the correct position and they're always there when we need them. We also have them on mixed attack as opposed to getting behind, as I feel like you get a lot more out of the players this way. If you put them on mixed attack, they get a lot more involved in the build up and they're a lot more varied in their attacking runs and things like that. If you put them on getting behind, they're very one dimensional and you're restricted to just playing things like through balls, as they always make the same one dimensional runs. Now moving on to the cam, I have him on comeback on defense. This is so the team will defend in a 4-4-2 shape when we don't have the ball. This is because the 4-4-2 is a much more superior defensive formation than the 4-3-1-2, based on the fact that we have an extra midfielder in that line of threes to make it a line of four, which just means we have better coverage of the wide areas while still being good, compact and narrow at the same time. But yeah, 4-4-2 just makes this a lot better. So by putting the cam on comeback on defense, he will come back to defend as a right mid in the 4-4-2 for me. Now moving on to the right centre mid, where we have the box-to-box player, we have him on default settings and cover centre. We have him on default settings because we don't want to restrict this player all that much. He has a bit of a free roll, so we kind of let him do his own thing. And then we just have him on cover centre, so he does defend as one of the centre mids in the 4-4-2. Now moving on to the middle centre mid, the more defensive minded player, we have him on stay back while attacking, stay on the edge of the box cross and cover centre. We have him on stay back while attacking, as we don't want him going forward. He is a defensive player, so we want him to stay back. We have him on stay on the edge of the box for cross because in case he gets a mind of his own and starts going forward, he won't commit into the penalty area. This is just like an extra defensive safe measure, if you will. And then we have him on cover centre again, so he does defend as one of the centre mids in the 4-4-2. Now moving on to the left centre mid, where we've got an actual attacker. We have him on get forward, get into the box cross and cover wing. Get forward is so he does fly forward and we get the most out of him because he is an actual attacker. We have him on get forward, get into the box for cross, so he's not hesitant to get into the penalty area, as if you have them on balanced crossing runs, they can be a little bit hesitant, a little bit static, and they don't do too much that way. So get into the box cross, super useful. And then we have him on cover wing, which is the most important setting, as it's going to make him defend as a left mid in the 4-4-2 shape. So in my case, the back four will be the same. Saka will be my left mid, Casemiro my left centre mid, Pogba my right centre mid, and Jorginho my right mid. Now moving on to the fullbacks, my more attacking fullback, I have him on balanced attack and overlap. This is so he will contribute to the attack and add a wider option going forward. This is because the 4-3-1-2 is obviously a narrow formation, and sometimes we need a wider option, which is what this left back will give us on the overlap run type and the balance setting. So it's super important to have one fullback going forward, in my opinion. Now moving on to the right back, my more defensive fullback, I have him on stay back while attacking and overlap. We have him on stay back, so we always have at least 3 defenders back, and then we have him on the overlap run type in case I do send him on a run forward. He'll make the overlapping runs to add extra width. As for the centre backs and the keeper, these are on default settings and I do not touch them. But yeah guys, they're my custom tactics and player instructions for the 4-3-1-2. If you have enjoyed or found it useful, please be sure to drop us a thumbs up, sub to the channel if you are new, and don't forget to turn on notifications. And with all that aside guys, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.